Okay, so this topic of, as we often hit with in so many of the shows, meditation. I'm not excited to do that. Doing it more now. I know the benefit, or I'm learning the benefit. I believe in the benefit of it. Should I say that? But sleep as well is not one that I'm not exercise. Let's talk about it. Food. Let's talk about it. Even recovery, of going away and doing a getaway and renewing yourself. But sleep in and of itself, I just assume not. If I could have a pill, I would do that. So I'm not excited. And I don't know if that's just me. I tend to wonder, is it a big popular issue out there? Who wants to talk about sleep?
Well, no, I think culturally it's still, you can sleep when you're dead. I got stuff to do and I'm strong enough, I can handle it. And even if you recognize the value of sleep, the priority of the urgent thing that's in front of you for people who are doers is still going to, say, well, it's got to get done, whatever the thing is. So I think culturally we still live in a world where we might verbally value sleep, but action wise, we really don't.
Well, and I, at night, I mean, I'm not looking forward to going to sleep.
Really?
Well, I am now somewhat, because I get tired and I just want to go to sleep, and I know that it'll help my morning. But in the moment, I just as soon eat cheesecake and watch a show, and just like my kids do. I don't know. Do I really want to go to sleep? I just get tired. I mean, I authentically get tired, and I don't want to feel bad the next day. And so right now I am averaging, because of COVID and school stuff, I am sleeping more than ever. So I'm averaging 8.5 now.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Eight
For
and
how, since COVID? Ish, since March or
Ish.
so, yeah.
I mean, I think I grew into it, but now I am, and I'm not setting an alarm, and that's just.
And you just wake up
Mm-hmm.
and are ready to go to bed in the evening. And
So I'm saying right now, my body naturally wants to sleep 8.5 hours. Now we could say, or could we say, I'm doing things that maybe are not perfect. So my body is naturally needing that much time to recover, that if I was living in X way, it could recover in quicker time. That's good.
That is conjecture, and I don't think we'll ever honestly know it. And even once you did know that, tomorrow you'll be a day older and everything's going to change.
Yeah.
And you might need a little bit more, a little bit less. But I'm impressed. I mean, 8.5 hours, that's pretty good.
What? I guess. Or should I feel guilty?
Maybe you need 9.
Well, maybe I need 9, or maybe I should be able to be okay on less. I don't know. But that right now, that's where I am. And I cannot remember the last time that I had that middle of the day slump, or I was just sitting there trying to work and I can't think. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm
well, and when I said that's pretty good, and I would say what I'm impressed with on you is that the waking up without an alarm. I think that's something, and maybe there are just people who need an alarm to wake up, or I am one of those. I've never been able to wake up early without the alarm kind of a person on Saturday or Sunday morning. If I'm sleeping in and I just let it go, I'll tend to sleep longer. And
I think I used to. I don't know. I think I hope it's circadian rhythm.
That's what I'm saying. I especially if it's been for a few months now, that you could probably look and rely on that and say, I'm an 8.5 hour guy and I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. Now I'm not getting up as early as I was, kind of the 5 a.m., the Robin Sharma
Mm-hmm.
5 a.m. club, the Hal Elrod. But I wonder, is it not so much the focus on getting up at that time or so early? We do that based on the fact that most of our cultural schedule with school and work starts at this time. So if you're going to have time, you got to get up that early, because I'm not getting up very rarely before 6. So I'm sleeping later. And sometimes it'll be, 6:30 or something like that. But then I'm going ahead and taking my time, and I do my devotions, and I have time, and I switch. Most of the time I'm exercising in the middle of the day now, so I don't have to do that first thing in the morning, yada, yada. Either way, I'm looking at it, and I'm just, the biggest thing, just like I have in the intro of this show, is saying, when I go to bed, I want to be like my phone. I plug it in, and when I wake up, it's charged. That's what I expect. I don't want to come down and say, man, it's plugged in all night and it's only at 65%, or plug it in and it doesn't start charging until 2 hours before.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's in the clinic. That's what I will hear people say is I seem to be sleeping XYZ hours. It was long enough, or it ought to be long enough. And now I'm not waking up refreshed. I'm waking up tired. It takes me longer to wake up. I need the cup of coffee. I don't enjoy it. I need it. And then maybe an extra one. And then I hit the afternoon slump. And I use that word bonk a lot. Everybody kind of knows what that means, where you're just going along, you hit a wall, and they're like, yeah, my afternoon bonk hits at 10 a.m. And lasts all day long. And then strangely enough, when it's 9 p.m., I'm awake, and now I can't fall asleep. So we can talk about some of those sleep issues that people have, but the fact that you don't have it, you don't recognize it, you're now at 8 hours plus. I would say I don't ever have it either. And with COVID, the kids go to school a little bit later. So my schedule shifted over, and my average is nearing 7.5, which is really good. You put me to shame, maybe, if that's what our bodies need.
But I know that's been your life trajectory, especially as a doctor. I mean, you guys are worse.
It was much worse
from med school on.
And how much of my burden now as an older person is related to 30 years of that, we'll never know. And it's conjecture, but I do feel pretty good on the 7.5, and I don't ever hit the bonk. I look forward to going to bed. I'm trying to turn the lights out by 10. And
I look forward to going to bed because you got me addicted to reading
on the books.
Really good books. So I'm eager to see what happens in the next chapter. And if I wait too long, I'm too tired to read any. So yeah, I'm usually 9 o'clock. Actually, I'm putting one of the kids to bed sometimes around 8, and I think I could fall asleep right now, and I don't want to do that.
There is. So we're beyond reading to the kids now, but it was amazing. Marcy and I would both say, because you would start reading at 8 or something, and it's just amazingly how sleepy I would get, and then it's like I am ready to go to bed now. But then of course you got to go do the dishes and whatever. And that, I think, is part of the problem that people are experiencing out there, that for most of human history, when the sun goes down, that's the beginning phase of preparing for bed. And for so many of us now, it's the beginning of TV and the opposite signals going into our eyeballs and brains that signal awakeness, and the subtle perception of confusion, even that your brain is like, wait a minute, I thought we were getting ready to go to bed, but now I hear these lights are coming on. And it does. So now we're in multiple pandemics. And
it would be interesting to take, a study group of 100 people on an island with no electronics, no lights. You can have candles, and see what they would do without electronics, without screens, without lights, electronic light. I think we would it's dark, sit around the campfire a little bit, and man, I'm tired. And then the sun comes up, and you don't have blocking shades, and you just wake up with it.
Yeah. And that's how it has been for such a long period of time, until, as some people say, just yesterday, in a long-term perspective, just a few decades of consistent fake light, if we can call it that, going in. And not only going in, but then, the messages, meaning what your brain is thinking about and how we are training it. And so this is all going to reach back to the shows that we've done before on brain training and all of those kind of things. And so sleep and the epidemic of sleep disturbance, sleep apnea, whatever nuances you want to put on that are prior to actual diagnoses, when we talk about snoring and mouth breathing and all those kind of things. What I will ask people in the clinic is, and we alluded to it earlier, how's your sleep? And they'll say, oh, usually fine. And then when I start to ask questions, it's not as fine as they think they are, or the average amount of sleep is way low. And they'll say, 6 or 7. And oftentimes people can't fall asleep, or they can't stay asleep, or they wake up unrefreshed.
Yeah. And then, the other one, I guess, maybe a fourth one is also just the person who is willpower, and it's kind of the military thing. You get up at 5 and you stay up till midnight, and you just churn it out. And it's amazing how the body adjusts, how the body will survive and do that, as you say, then until it can't, or until you start seeing the manifestation of something. And some people are going to be able to endure that seemingly better than others, but I'm still going to be concerned. I mean, if somebody's flying my commercial plane and they have learned how to do that, and they're there with their 5 hours of sleep a night with their cup of coffee, and they've been doing it day in and day out, am I incorrect in believing that there's no way they can be at full capacity? Or maybe they can be for a certain time until they can't. But I want somebody, my surgeon, I don't want that surgeon. I want the one
That's right.
who got 9 hours of sleep. And yet, but that's what we do. And so my wondering is, even if you're the person who's hearing this, who's living on 5 hours of sleep a night, and they've been churning that out, and they're high performing, are they performing as high as they can? Or is it possible that they could be, but they probably won't be for as long as they could? One or the
Absolutely. So the medical answer to those questions are, it is incontrovertible and it is measurable what sleep deprivation does to the human body. So even if you are a higher performer, you're less high performing than you would have been. We know that. And you're less high performing for as long as you could be performing. And so you and I at 52 and 49 are saying, hey, we want another half a century of performance. And therefore, we have to sacrifice something now in order to go to bed on time, in order to be the kind of people who can effectively be working at 70 or 80, and because we have things we want to do. Our culture, again, is planning on retiring and relaxing on those. So now we're going to churn and burn. And we're going to produce, and in fact, our economy is set up that way. You mentioned the military. The military is set up where they have you for 20 years. They're going to churn and burn harder. And you have the Jocko guys who are saying, I get up at 4:32 because I do, and I will. And I'm going to go to bed on, well, whenever he went to bed. But he didn't go to bed on time when he was a SEAL. But those guys are also taught sleep is a weapon. So if you don't sleep, you're missing one of your weapons. Now, granted, on a campaign, you might be awake for 72 hours in a row, but during training times, at least nowadays, the recognition of it is there, but it's also talked about. But oh, by the way, go ahead and get your stuff done.
Yeah.
It's and having been in the military for 10 years, it is the idea of, no, sleep is good. Go to bed on time, but get your stuff done, and get up on time because we're going to start, and all of that. So our world, and that's the cultural waters that we're swimming in, might even begin speaking to the value of sleep, and everybody's aware of screens and all of that. But screens aren't going away, and they're only gaining more and more of our attention, more and more of our time. And so it now becomes what you said at the very outset. Really? It feels so bland.
Well, and I was thinking thankless too. It's kind of the cliche of parenting is a thankless job, whatever. Nobody comes along, gives you kudos for that. Nobody's going to come along, and I'm not going to get high fives for sleeping 8.5 hours of sleep. I get high fives for what I do.
That's right.
And I can do more theoretically if I sleep less, though there's an argument too as well. So if I sleep 6 hours a night and I've got that much extra time, do I really accomplish more than if I get sleep and I am at full tilt boogie and I work smart and more efficiently? I mean, that's an argument we can make, and
all day long.
Be really difficult to measure. I mean, for me, I know, and I read this somewhere, that one of the first things to go with lack of sleep is creative thinking and critical thinking skills. And I would think about that, making decisions. And then I also think about just tolerance and patience are the things that I lack, like with our kids at night when we had nothing.
I was going to say, Kevin, that when sleep shrinks up, and it's going to take a wise person to admit this, the first thing that goes out is not your creativity and critical thinking at work. It's creativity with your kids. Like, we've all, been playing house before. And if I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, playing house is easier than if I'm exhausted and I just don't want to do that. And so I think our families suffer first, because especially more on the male side, and we've spoken to women, and if the buck stops with them in the families, which culturally is the waters that we're swimming in, it's unfortunate, and they suffer. And that's where I would look at, husbands and fathers and say, step up to the table and turn the TV off and go to bed on time for the sake of your family, and also your work and those kind of things. And that's very hard. I'm thinking of my own family and how hard that is.
It
And
is. It's going back to the giving up the good for the great. And if I'm going to
yeah,
get, for me, if I'm going to get 8.5 hours of sleep, what am I not going to do?
yeah.
Possibly, again, hopefully I can work smart and try to get as much done. I don't feel like I'm lacking as much. Actually, probably the thing that I miss out on is the American right, excuse me, of entertainment.
I was going to say, what you're giving up is that last little bit of ESPN or
Mm-hmm.
now that, and in your family, what you're probably honestly giving up though, is your teenagers and 20-year-olds late night conversations.
It is. There's almost another world that happens a lot of times. I go to bed. The little ones go. A lot of times I go to bed with the little ones, and then Terry, my wife, she's up with
She's
the
up
other
with the
ones,
big ones.
and then I hear the next day about whatever they talked about. But then generally, almost always, she's going to sleep
In.
yeah, 1, 2 more hours later in the morning when one of us is going to take the little ones to school early. And, I'm usually up anyways and ready to do that. So it's like a sacrifice, but
It's
so
got to be done.
you're right. Cause there used to be the time when I felt like, my gosh, I'm going to be up. I want to be up for the little ones and I want to stay up with the late ones, but what's going to give then? And that's going to be my sleep, my exercise, my morning time.
And then your tolerance, your creativity, and your effectiveness. Yeah.
So if we look at this and say, what are the primary things? I mean, our last show, this is 47, 46 was on energy. What depletes our energy? We say, what wrecks our sleep? It's easy to say, well, everything, of course, but what are the primary, if we have to pick the front running things so right now what time is it? 12 o'clock, lunchtime. If I am going to get good sleep tonight, I mean, we could say it started, years ago, a month ago, a week ago, right. I know. But if I'm going to get good sleep, the question is, how do I prepare myself to get quality sleep tonight? Yeah.
So, like you alluded to, it began years ago, but let's just say it began today. And I think what's the main thing that wrecks it is the cultural waters we swim in, where we have the mindset that sleep is the last thing that you do. So one very
well, and I like that, and it may be semantics. It's what I do to recover from today instead of prepare for tomorrow.
That's where I was going.
You've got, well, I know you were, but it's so easy to say, well, it's semantics either way. So for some reason, it makes a difference to me. You got me thinking about it differently to where now if I'm just going into bed to recover from today, I don't think about it as much. I'm going, no, I'm preparing.
So let's because that's new for them, I think, right? For our listeners.
We may have mentioned it before, but I'm still very aware of it.
So that is going to be the recommendation to switch your mindset. And all of us think, what's the last thing you do during the day? Everybody says, go to bed. And I would say, okay, that is our American cultural mindset, but let's shift it over. And other cultures throughout the centuries have had this mindset, which is the first thing that you do to start the day is go to bed. And you build your energy in preparation for the day that is coming. And so the culture that you and I are aware of, that historical Jewish culture where the end of the day is sundown, 6 p.m., meaning, and nobody thinks about it this way, but meaning the very first thing you do on the new day is go to bed, is kind of wrap up the day with your nighttime stuff that you would say to your family and sort of say your prayers and that kind of thing. And then you begin the next day with this preparation, like, okay, I want to get my sleep in order so that tomorrow I have the kind of tolerance and wherewithal and kindness and gentleness that I need for my kids and my family. And then, oh yeah, I'm also going to go to work and all of that. And that, for you and I, it's been years of trying to think that way and become aware of it to where, like I was saying before, I get antsy if we're in the 9 p.m.s and we haven't started, heading to bed.
I do too. And you started that, you were the catalyst for that for me with guarding my morning time. If I'm going to get up.
That's right. If the morning is valuable,
yeah,
that's going to mean your bedtime.
Because you took me back. It was back when the kids' schedule was more solid with school and stuff. And so we're going to leave the house at whatever it was, 7:15 or something like that. If I'm going to get up in the morning, and that's back when I was exercising in the morning too. If I'm going to have my personal time, back, and then it was 5:15
Yeah.
or whatever. If I'm going to do that, and I know I don't function well on little sleep, then I got to redo my whole evening. It is funny going back to the analogy of charging the phone in, because when I think about charging the phone in, my literal natural mental mindset is I'm plugging it in so that when I grab it in the morning, it is fully charged to last the whole day.
Right.
But I wasn't doing that with myself. So now if I do that and come over here, and it makes me think about what am I eating that's going to help or hurt my sleep, which I feel, I mean, just to go to a tangible one, for me, I feel like that's paramount. Maybe I give it too much credit as far as what I eat. That in the evening
is beginning the planning of your bedtime.
Of my bedtime. That is going to have more impact on my sleep than anything as we look at, food, stress.
Well, you asked what's the top priority of that. And I think food is going to be down the list.
Really?
Yeah. Compared to others. Because number one is the TV. I mean, TV is culturally, not in your house, but culturally.
But of wrecking my sleep. So if I have the opportunity to charge myself, I'm going to lay down, plug in, that you're going to put screen as more detrimental to my
long-term longevity. So I'm thinking time and decades and all of that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd absolutely put historically TV time. So people would say to me, and if you're, 50 years old or older, then people would say, I go to bed with Johnny Carson.
Right.
You watch the news, watch Johnny Carson go to bed. And I'd be like, if I insinuated to them that part of the problem with their insomnia, whether it's can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, wake up unrefreshed, is the fact that they go to bed with Johnny Carson. And they would say, no. I've been doing that for 30 years. That can't have anything to do with it because this problem is new, which is exactly like the guy over here. If I say, well, the reason you have lung cancer is because you've been smoking. He said, no. I smoke a pack a day for the last 40 years. I never once had cancer. It's brand new.
Right.
It's so the biggest, if you take the big picture thing, is screens. And now I would say the phone is even worse than TV.
Well, I was going to ask that. So is there literal, this stuff, is there literal reality of, if we look right here, my phone right here, 2 inches from my face. Now I got my laptop.
You got two screens over there, one here,
and then one up, one up there. But if you look at the TV, I mean, I'm probably in our living room, I'm probably sitting 15 feet away. I sit further back.
Yeah, that's you guys. I would say more than half the amount of people listening to this have a TV in their bedroom. And it's one of the last things that they do before they say, okay, I'm going to go is check the news, check ESPN, just kind of see what's on.
Well, so how much relevance does proximity, size of the screen?
Zero. That's an old wives' tale. Yeah.
Come on. If I'm doing this.
Yeah, no. Well, now with the awareness of blue light, I don't know if I can go to zero, but it is one of, your parents telling you you're sitting too close to the TV. You're going to ruin your, that's a falseness.
Okay.
But with blue light and the old cathode rays, and now we have these new kinds of TVs, and what's the impact? I honestly don't know about the proximity. The reason that the phones are worse is not the proximity. It's because of the dopamine hit, the swipe, the what's next, and then just turn your brain off of the feel good of what's next.
So what do you have? So you've got literal negative effects of blue light. Now you're saying you've got the dopamine, anxiety, whatever from social media, whatever.
Well, really just think of it as stimulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which could relate to if you're watching Johnny Carson and it makes you laugh, that may not be as harmful as if you're watching a horror flick or an adventure thing that has you all ramped up.
True.
So we're looking at
the content,
the stimulus level and the blue light. Okay. So just to hit that though, where do you feel like, so should you stop at 30 minutes before?
No. Okay, great. Because people are going to say, okay, what should it be? And I would say, and this is how we're raising our kids, minimum for people who don't already have insomnia or something going on. Because whatever you say, the minimum
is what everybody's going to take. So watch out.
I know. Minimum is an hour.
Okay.
And for most listeners out there, they're like, oh yeah, I don't do that. It's your phones. So I think it's a great habit is, for sure, don't have your phone in the bedroom. And even more so is plug that phone in on the family station or whatever, outside of the hearing distance and networking and whatever, so that it's less distracting. In the, dinner time. Like, hey, it's dinner time. Everybody come in for dinner. Now it's family. It's evening. And for me, and we told our kids, look, I am on call always. My phone goes here. Y'all's phone goes here. And that's my right as a parent and a prerogative and whatever else, the way people set up their family. But it's off. I don't check it. Don't swing by and check it or whatever else. I mean, maybe the weather or whatever, but it's not and I'm very comfortable with where we are right now that I can unplug my head from the phone and it's done. Yeah. And I think that is a great habit for people to get into. If you're not in that habit.
It's great unless I text you and then I want a response. You need a special ding for me.
Correct.
Your wife and me.
But if people are looking to set the mark, I would say an hour. And so especially your teenagers, just coach them and create the line of an hour. There's no phone in the bedroom and no TV in the bedroom. And it's an hour, and just give your brain some space is great. Yeah,
which we do. I have my timer go off and I actually go around with a basket, take the phones, and I actually take them upstairs into our room on airplane mode. Mm-hmm. And then technically it happens half the time. The Wi-Fi is turned off and it's off at night. There's a lot of nights where I don't watch anything on a screen and my phone's overplay. It's the music player for the house. So I read a book and, ultimately go to bed. So it's been plenty of time. On the nights where we do watch something, I'll usually watch until, I'm ready to go to bed. I'll go and try to read, but I bet I don't make it 30 minutes between.
Me too. On the movie watching nights that there's going to be, I'm tired and those kind of things. And if those are the weekends and they're the interspersed, okay, it's not the day in and day out of this, these hard things that we're talking about of.
So we're back to cake. It's not bad if you have it
on your
once in a while, but not every day. Okay. So screens, top of the list. I didn't know. Okay. So if food's not next, what is?
Okay. So thinking about sleep and then coming back down and saying, screens and that kind of thing. So the next thing that I would put in that list, food's going to be third, but it's your, and this is kind of an intangible, but it's the switch, the flip the switch mindset that you and I have worked really hard to train in at the 9 o'clock. We both have wives that are night owls. And in college and grad school and all that kind of stuff, a lot of stuff happens at night. So all of us are in training this do things at night mentality. And now there are genetic night owls, but they're less. So those people are out there. And most of us have trained in because all children, around 8 o'clock at night, they're clearly tired and they might be wound up or whatever, but they're ready for bed and they need to be trained in to, go to bed, but they are also naturally built that way, most of them. So it's the mental mindset of the flip the switch that then prevents people to begin the process, the habit, the entrainment of go to bed. And people will then tell me, I just can't fall asleep, or I just can't go to bed, or I just lay there and lay awake. And I'll be like, well, you've trained yourself to do that. Now you have to untrain yourself to do that. If you, like we said, value the morning time, you don't want to, it depend. Now, if you don't value the morning time and you like to get up at 7:55 to get to work by 8, keep doing it. But it's a really
and you're saying 9 o'clock. So whatever your schedule is, you're saying if bedtime is here, if bedtime is at 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever.
I think you've got to have that mindset of 1 hour ahead of time.
Yeah.
You click the switch.
And I just thought setting the stage.
Okay.
Which
you set the stage.
I set the stage. So I authentically do that at night. I hate curtains. I hate shades. I love bright light, but at night then I don't like the lights. So I want dim lights, candles,
lamp lights. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we do. So as soon as dinner's over, it's, and now we've got especially the older boys are into this. They want the lights off, get the lights off and just have the lamps on. If there's music playing, I don't have Van Halen.
It's not Nora Jones.
It's Nora. Exactly. It's Amos Lee. It's, it's mellow stuff playing to set that stage and have that ambiance of rest, of slow. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine having, watching NASCAR at 11 o'clock at night and then trying to go to bed. That's just,
And we're guilty of that. Like, we're Kansas City Chiefs fans, and I hate watching it real time, so it's always recorded, and that'll go long and late, and we're watching football, or we're watching something or some movie that's
not every night.
but not every night. And Monday through Thursday, kind of the regular run of the mill nights, we set the stage, and 9 o'clock hits, and it sets the stage of. And we're big on reading, so go to bed with enough time so that you get to read. And the kids, thankfully, all like to do that. And they're tired and they're ready to go. So we're not pushing really hard. Actually, COVID in our high school kids, it's even later that they get up. So they're kind of wanting to stay up a little late because they can sleep in. And so that's part of our COVID pressure of trying to jumble around that. If you have multiple setting the stage time periods for multiple sets of people, that makes it hard.
It's interesting. I told the boys this because, I have a hard time enforcing, go to bed right now, but they're going to have to get up now at whatever time to go to bed. To go to school. And I told them, it was a couple of weeks ago, we just talked about sleep. I said, guys, one of you was up really late. I don't know who it was. And I don't want to, come down on you, but ultimately, this affects you. It affects your mood. It affects your health. So to some degree, if you're going to stay up late, and I said it with more respectfully, this is going to sound, but in essence, I'm saying, don't come complaining to me about whatever, about, I'm having a hard time doing my homework, or I don't feel well, or whatever. Well, if you're getting 7 hours of sleep a night at 14 years old, okay. And I think that might've resonated with them more than anything. And I wasn't a jerk about it, but I said, guys, if you're telling me about this ache, complaint, irritation, whatever, how could you not? You guys understand this. Right. Sleep. You're choosing to do this. So if you choose to do that, okay, but this is going to be the fallout of it. And let's call a spade a spade. So
and so Kevin, I would highlight that, and your kids are kind of a year, or the high school ones are a year ahead of where we are. Yeah. And when I come down, it comes down more as a rule, because the emotional maturity to accept that is like, all right, yeah, I see that if I don't do it the right way here, I'm gonna have a consequence on the other side. And where we are, I think it's like, well, that's okay. I'll put up with the consequences, because it's not such a big deal to me if I don't make an A, but it's only a big deal to you, Dad. Yeah. So where we are, the borders are still in place, and they're very strict when they're 4 years old, and less strict over here in the early teenage years. But by 18, theoretically, adults need to go off and manage themselves. And now we're talking to a lot of adults out there, and I would say most adults don't have this level of maturity. It feels bad to say I have to go to bed on time, and how boring and how bland, and what's the big deal about sleep anyway? If I'm doing fine, that might be okay for everybody else, but I'm okay on 6.5 hours of sleep at night. Yeah. And we're back to, well, you are until you aren't. And if you are wise enough to listen to studies and science, and that's what we said at the beginning, is that it's incontrovertible that most people need to be around more than 7 hours of actual sleep time, not 8 or 9 being the average, but I would say 8 hours in the bed is a good rule of thumb. Over 7 hours of actual sleep is a good rule of thumb. Some more, some less, but that's a good rule of thumb. Recognizing the danger and the damage of screens right before bed, of not setting the stage right before bed. And then we get to, should you eat right before bed? I would say no.
What should you eat at all? I told you, because that is the one that maybe I give it too much focus, but I'm just so aware of maybe because I'm driven by my taste buds and my appetite.
Your God is your belly.
My God is so often my belly, and looking at what I eat and knowing, man, it can and I can track it a lot of times. I told you last week I had, I think white rice specifically really messes me up, maybe more so than somebody else. And we've all got our individual propensities, as we talk about all the time. That white rice, it's a simple carb, right? I mean, it's just and it messes. And I can usually go to sleep pretty quick. I rarely ever don't go to sleep pretty quick. But then
you're the stay asleep guy.
Well, yeah, because I can wake up. I'll wake up 2 hours later, and maybe I got to pee or something like that, and then my mind's going nuts.
Right.
And I can watch, and I can't go to sleep. It happened last night, and We watched the show and I imbibed. I ate.
So here's why. So we can explain that, and a lot of people will actually know about this, and they might not know why, but that I fall asleep just fine. But if I happen to wake up for whatever reason at 1, 2, 3 o'clock, then my mind starts to go, and I just doze, and I'm restless the rest of the night.
Yep.
And one of the main reasons why is that our dinner times tend to be carb heavy, and so then you get the insulin spike, right? So around, if you eat at 6 or 7, and you get that insulin spike, and so then around 10 or 11 or 12, depending upon people and whatever, now you've got your insulin spikes. And so your carbohydrate is going to plummet. And so just like people get the cravings around 10 a.m. after breakfast, and that's the snack, what if subconsciously and underneath your brain's awareness, you have this craving that's around 1 or 2 or 3 a.m. and you happen to wake up because you just rolled over, or you need to go to the bathroom, or whatever. And that's an actual normal time for a partial wake up, not a wake up into consciousness, but in the sleep cycles, there is a reset around 1 or 2 a.m. about. But if your cortisol level has been bumped just a little bit, because there's a little bit of an awareness of the body that says, wow, we're having a glucose plummet, then that'll spike the cortisol, and the brain is now in a milieu, in a context where the brain is like, okay, we don't go to bed when we're a little bit nervous about this. And in fact, historically, what's one of the things that people do if they say, oh, I can't sleep, I go to shuffle down to the kitchen and I just get a glass of warm milk or something, and you reset the stage all over again to be needing to eat in the middle of the night. And that's exactly what we have in our culture, where people eat every 2, 3, 4 hours constantly. And now we're adding in a not uncommon 2 a.m. snack.
Yeah.
And
it's just the habit. Then I'm afraid of stuff like that, then my body's now going to adjust, thinking that I'm going to get up, and whether it's eat or read or whatever you do to deal with being up that you shouldn't be up anyways. And now you've created this habit.
And the more you do it, the more you do it.
Yeah.
So if we talk about, so we talked about screens, we talked about the setting the stage. And then one last thing I would say is the whole concept of sleep hygiene. Have you ever heard that referred to as that? So sleep hygiene, hygiene means, clean and whatever else. And in this context, it means the bigger picture of setting the stage. So sleep begins early. We already said that your mindset. So one of the best things for regular sleep is regular exercise. So if you're not exercising most days per week, will that impact your sleep and sleep quality? Yes. So if you want better sleep, should you exercise every day? Yes. And if you sleep better and more effectively, will you have more energy for exercise? Yes.
Is there probably a cutoff time of shouldn't exercise?
So if you are a not night owl, if you sometimes have trouble falling asleep, then one of the things to really focus in on is exercise earlier. So Marcy is a night owl. So we, from time immemorial, I've hated morning exercise. So our exercise time is kind of the 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. window of somewhere around in there. And that's when we do that. And that feels pretty good. And we don't ever have trouble falling asleep, but people just have to pay attention to themselves. But lack of exercise over time is a ding on your sleep and sleep quality. Light, right? So now we live wherever you live in the world, and if you live in the city and things like that, we all have, and I'm noticing it now. Marcy got one of these things that plugs in that dispenses some of the essential oils that has the light on it.
Oh yeah.
And it's just so, if I'm waking up in the morning by myself, I'm like, that is so bright. This itty bitty thing.
Electrical tape. I use those stupid lights.
But the spray thing comes out. It's a round light, and the sprayer's right in between it.
Okay.
I'm like, how am I going to cover that one up? So the dishwasher has a dun light. So we always wash the dishes at night. The dun light is so bright, it goes in through our door and it lights up our room.
Holy smokes.
So all of it, to pay attention to that, and people are like, really? And the baby monitors and this and that and the other, a phone light.
Gosh, yeah.
So it really does matter. Ambient light is a signal. And of course, what about people in the old days and stars and things like that? Yes, but there's always seasons of the stars being more or less, of the moon being more or less. And there was a time of pitch black, and we hardly ever have that time anymore. So,
well, and even the Native Americans had a teepee. I mean, they could have stayed out in the open, but I assume maybe it was for that. Keep out the
there was
light,
always
keep
the
out the
shelter.
wind. Yeah.
That's right. So that's one thing to think about in sleep hygiene is exercise consistency and light consistency. That is a part of the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm impacts so much more than what we had thought about in the past. And the guy who found it, and really who found the connection to circadian rhythm to nearly every system of the body, he got the Nobel Prize sometime in the 2000s. I can't remember, but we poo-poo that. Like, oh yeah, well, it's coming up, our time change.
Yeah.
That destroys sleep hygiene. That's such a dumb idea when it comes to physiology. Benjamin Franklin did it, it might have saved some candles, but physiologically, it really does harm. And are we ever going to change that? Who knows? But like, I had a patient just the other day. She's like, right when I get scheduled, it's going to change again. And so to those people, as a part of your sleep hygiene, I would put a calendar reminder on your phone and begin your own bedtime incremental clock of 15 minutes of change, like the month prior.
Oh yeah.
So that there's not this jarring change.
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't bother me, and I don't get jet lag and whatever. And so that's probably genetic, and people can shift their melatonin levels over.
I've not been bothered too much by it either. What about sound?
So sound and white noise and those kind of things. So there is evidence that white noise is good. And this again,
I'm asking, we have a big family. And so with, people
all
going
the
to bed
noise.
at different, so right. We always have, so we have a white noise. I try to keep it as low as we can, not super high volume, but keep it low, but enough. Otherwise I do struggle with being the light sleeper that hears everything.
Then sound is going to be a good thing for you. We do sound, we do a fan. And I think and we actually do it kind of on a louder volume for that very reason, because Marcy and I are getting up and going to bed at different times. So white noise is part of that sleep hygiene. Another big one, I should have put this kind of high up on that. Temperature makes a difference. And so here's things for people to remember. You must warm up to fall asleep and then cool down to stay asleep. So if your hands and feet are cold, you won't fall asleep. So now and it's so interesting, and you can hear my tone go up a little bit. This is related to thyroid. So this is related to and all hormones speak to each other, and sleep is also hormonally related. That is what we're talking about here, is the neurotransmitters and hormone signals of sleep. You've got to set the stage. One of the settings of the stage is temperature. So cooler in the evenings is clearly better. Now, if you've got, cold-natured people out there and they're so cold and they just got to warm up, I'd say, yes, warm up, but don't make it to where you have to wake up to throw off the covers at night and have that's sleep disruptive. So do plan bedtime in such a way where your extremities are warm and you want your core cooler. So you do need to go to bed in a way that your hands and feet can be warm, or you will delay sleep so that they can warm up, and then your core wants to be able to cool down. And so some of the sleep wearables and things like that are looking at body temperature, and you should drop down as a part of quality of sleep. Some of the sleep technology stuff about like the chili pad is designed to keep your core cooler during the night. That will enhance your quality of sleep and the ratios of deep and light and those kind of things.
We're weird with that. Obviously, my house is at 9,200 feet and our bedroom is the furthest away from any heat source. So it's always cold. I always go to bed, pull everything up over me, get warm, I guess pretty quickly, fall asleep. Probably half the time, maybe not quite, 25% of the time at least, if not more, I will wake up and be warm enough that I'll throw the top comforter off me.
Because you need it to warm up at night, right?
At least quicker, yeah. I mean, I love snuggling. I love going to bed chilly like that.
And that is good.
Yeah.
As long as your hands and feet. But that first few minutes, and everybody kind of knows, oh my gosh, I'm so cold, I'm going to have to put socks on or get up and turn the hot water on or something like that. And I would say, yes, do that. That actually helps. And then get back in there, let your core warm up.
But I also find that I burn hotter like that and get warm if I've eaten closer to bedtime.
Absolutely. So now we can talk about the food piece and what you eat and when you eat.
Yeah.
And it is better in general for people to go to bed empty. So say that again. It's just our whole culture.
99% of the people listening, including me and you.
Including me. It's like, oh my gosh, right? And we had Dr. Dale Bredesen on a couple of times ago, and his 12-3 plan or whatever else. And the 3 was go to, eat at least 3 hours prior to when you go to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, we are not.
Which gets back to screens too. Because
absolutely.
What I found, if I'm sitting there reading a book for the evening,
I'm not eating.
Hardly ever.
But if I'm on a screen,
I'm eating. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, and so on that, so here we are. So best case would be not 3 hours before, or at least 2 hours or whatever from a time standpoint. Okay. But if you're going to, because, if you're going to,
if you're going to, and that's kind of like where I think both of our families are, I'd say at least an hour. Give yourself an hour of awakeness and uprightness and so that the food can get out of your stomach before you lay down. And again, if you've already exercised that day, your metabolism is faster. It's going to push through that food a little bit faster, and all of these interrelated, interconnected things. So food, and when you eat, the earlier the better. And like the other day, somebody said, we just ate, we were going to have dessert. And then they said, well, let's watch a little bit more of our movie and then have dessert later. And I was like, no, let's just go ahead and get it in there now. So we can get it.
So you can deal with the sugar. Yeah, right. Totally. We do the same thing.
And so I think that's an okay way to go. And there's another hour of the movie left over where you're kind of watching it. And of course that can't be every night. What about the what? And so if people ask all the time, what's the best diet? And we've talked about that on the show. There is no best diet, but if you were going to kind of design it, the middle of the day meal being a little bit bigger and the end of the day meal being a little bit smaller. And you and I don't do breakfast anymore, but we do the opposite of that.
I know, totally. No breakfast.
A lighter lunch,
and then dinner.
And then a big old dinner.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of your sleep food wreckage.
But then it matters. Okay, what is the dinner?
Then what's the dinner?
Yeah.
And that's where, if it's less carby, more of your high veggie.
So just lay out. The worst. Just so we always think that everybody should know this, but worst is going to be a big dinner
of simple carbs:
rice, potatoes,
corn.
Yeah. Gosh, what's another? Is there any other front runner? Those are probably
those would be the big.
You could do so. I'm
starch.
Yeah, I talked about white rice. I do better with, which we almost always do. I don't know why we had white rice. Just brown rice, long grain, wild rice.
That'll slow down that glucose insulin response.
Sweet potatoes, better than potatoes.
Do better than potatoes.
Yeah. Looking at that, and then of course veggies, go nuts.
As many as you want. We'll never decrease the amount of broccoli that you eat.
I don't think generally, obviously you can overeat anything, but meat is usually probably not going to be a bad one as far as your
from a sleep perspective. Some people, if because people call meat heavy eating and the digestion and things like that.
I do too, but it matters how much I eat. If I eat 3 ounces,
if you overeating anything where you're overfull is always going to be and even then I'd say, well, delay your bedtime. Maybe, right? It's which one's worse there, to try to go to bed earlier to stay on track, or to deal with indigestion or something like that because you've overeaten. So I'd say, well, don't overeat. And if you do, and it's the weekend, maybe go to bed a little bit later.
Okay. Then add beverages on that.
So yeah, a lot of people have to get up to speed. And I look at Kevin and I'd say that you ought not be that way.
I have too much beverage at night.
Right. There's no such thing as my bladder's too small, right? Nobody when they're 15 gets up in the middle of the night.
One of the ways I keep myself from eating is to sip on something, whether that is wine or seltzer.
Which would not be a good sleep hygiene methodology.
And that's a struggle. Yeah, that's a struggle. Yeah. But I was going to say, even with dinner though, just as far as the more harmful, I would guess, tea, if it's got caffeine, sugar in it, obviously a soda with, God knows how much sugar in it. I would say wine might be better, but still it's a sugar and it's
alcohol.
Does the alcohol
does impact the sleep.
Yeah. Yep. So those things too, I think those get innocuous. Oh, and juice. My gosh, I'm still blown away when I see
juice is never on the good list.
Oh my gosh, parents, and they think they're doing the kid's body good. And it's 100% juice for any time is we don't do it ever, but for dinner, oh my gosh, man, you're jacking that kid's.
There really is no call for it. I guess some people these days might do milk with dinner, and I would say there's really no call for it. And basically with dinner, you ought not be drinking with it's kind of a different topic.
We don't. I mean, so we sit down at our family and it's 10 people, or whatever. There's 0 glasses on the table, 0, except for me, because I often have wine.
That's fair. My family will still do it. Marcy enjoys it, but we have 4-ounce cups. The little, they're called juice cups.
They're called regular cups in Europe, but not in America.
Not in America. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And so, but even that is the dose of a glass of wine, right? It's 4 ounces, maybe 6, but I think it's 4 is a glass. And that's what in healthier cultures, a little bit of green tea, a little bit of wine, a little bit of seltzer water. Okay, you wet your whistle, but you can't have the double fisted, big gulp and free refills and tea or water, but because that will also delay your digestion, which also impacts your bedtime or what is going on later on as you're going to sleep. So a good rule of thumb is stay well hydrated between meals and don't drink during your meals. No. And if you do, it's a sip of wine, tea, water.
And again, like everything, we could just, go with, if you're going to, what's the best you can do? Well, water. Seltzer water. I mean, you can go back up to the worst, which would probably be tea, juice, Mountain Dew. Exactly. And on that, as we're talking about the reality, if somebody is saying, man, I hear you guys, but I'm going to watch a show and I'm going to eat something. Again, what's the least offensive thing that you could eat? Because I say that because I know mine is just like you have. We have a big supply of nuts. So if I'm going to eat late, admittedly the show's on and oh my gosh, I don't have enough willpower. And I'm going to get nuts, some flavored, pecans or cashews or whatever. And those bother me less than the popcorn, the carb, the chips, the whatever, probably even dairy. Dairy's probably a consistent one, whether it's cheese or whatever, which gets people mucusy for the night.
There's so many different individual responses here, but if you're going to choose the least offensive kind of thing for your snacks, popcorn's a great example, because in our family, popcorn would be one of those things that you can get pretty healthy version of popcorn, but it's going to wreck you.
Yeah.
But
you still wouldn't put it as good as nuts, would you? As far as a slow burn and.
Correct. I mean, nuts, especially if you're not overdoing calories and things like that, and it's a slow burn. But are you doing raw nuts?
Nope.
And so then there's the other things.
Lately, you know what? I have a bag right over there, brought from Texas, pecans that we shelled. And Terry, what did she do? She soaked them and then baked them.
Roasted them.
Uh-huh. So good.
Yeah. I most people will like the lightly salted roasted kind of a thing. So, and I go through lots of nuts, but that's my in between. That's my kind of snack when I get home from work. So it's not as much of a treat at night. And so it'll either be nothing, or we'll have a little dessert. We're trying to do little bitty ones. So like the least offensive, and you can buy healthier versions where they don't have the high fructose corn syrup of now. Here we're on Halloween and we have those candy corns.
That's horrific.
But we're going for the least bad, right? The organic candy corn. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Yeah, that's great.
But you get two of them.
But it's organic tobacco in my cigarette, doctor.
It's your after dinner treat, and we're done.
Yeah.
Right.
We have chocolate chips.
We'll try to do dark. So, and strangely, I kind of love the fact that my kids are turning their nose up at the dark chocolate, because then I get it all. But they don't like dark chocolate. And that's fine, but we're not buying milk. It'll never be in the house.
What's terrible is I buy the cheap chocolate chips for them, and I have the dark chocolate, and now they think they like the dark chocolate, but they eat up all my dark chocolate, and it's expensive.
So we're learning that and now we've got kids that are actually eating a lot. So that's hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know, right. The nuts, something to snack on.
Yeah.
I get it. And of course, if you're setting up the best parameters, try not to do anything and all that. But on the weekend nights, it's you're doing popcorn or
Yeah.
really healthy version of XYZ dessert. It's dessert. So let it
Well,
be
and I
dessert
do, I look at that and think, man, if it's going to be a sugary thing like that, let's eat it as quick, as soon as we can, not late.
early.
And then if I'm going to
And then be
eat late,
done. Don't have the open bag. And I noticed this
oh
last
yeah,
night because it was a new bag and the little kids, they can't stop.
yeah,
So now we hand them, you get, 5 candy corns or whatever, and then we put the bag away.
yeah,
Otherwise, it just,
yeah.
they don't stop.
Well, so food. One other thing that I want to hit on this though is the sleep apnea snoring issue. So because we can take all those things and do well and still have that issue over here, though I would assume though if you're eating lifestyle whatever, you're going to have less snoring, less sleep apnea. But for those who right, it is a thing. Even if you do well, because even in mine, I have done continually well, and yet was struggling with snoring, and for me solved it with one of those mouthpieces, but I'm mouth breathing, which I always do, so that's an issue in and of itself, but at least I'm not snoring, disrupting my sleep and my sleep and my wife's sleep with the little mouth, I don't know what you call it, mouth guard thing. You kind of form it there, and it keeps my jaw when I'm
From
on my
falling
back from
backwards.
falling back.
So there's lots that goes into this, from the morphology or just the shape of your face. And this goes way back into childhood and the lack of fiber in our diets. And the reason that is because over the decades of time, we don't chew enough to create size in our mandibles. And when that happens, everything is a little smaller. So your airway is smaller. And then you have a little bit of mucus from the milk or from allergies or something like that. And you have to open your mouth to breathe. And it's so common now that people say, well, but I just snore.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring the dentistry. You talked about that when we were kids. They pull the teeth, put braces on, and it narrowed everything.
Yeah, shrunk it
Now
in.
they've
Now
learned. I
they're
guess so. I've got
spreading it
kids.
out.
I've now got the third or fourth one that just went through the expander, where they
Correct.
expanded up in there, pain in the butt. But now I'm grateful after what you've taught me, and that's going to open things up
Correct.
instead of closing them.
I haven't even shared with you. So my littlest one, in an effort, who's 9, in an effort to not need braces. So, but he's small. Even I could tell that. And so micronathia, small maxilla and mandible. And so we're working with one of the dentists for him. And so he's wearing a nighttime guard that teaches his tongue to be at the top of the mouth. So the tongue is what's pushing up. So if everybody just pushed up right behind, don't push your teeth out, but right behind your front teeth, and push really hard with your tongue, there is what happens when the infant is suckling.
Oh yeah.
And of course, many people don't get to breastfeed. And if they do, it's less than a year. And so there's not enough pressure to expand that maxilla out. And then when we're not chewing high fiber diets and it's these highly processed foods, there's not enough pressure to expand things out. And so then it just develops over time where the tongue is not in the right spot. And then a few decades later, and then at 40, your tongue falls backwards or something like that. Okay, so lots of issues there on the decades of not necessarily dentistry, but just mouth hygiene or mouth physiology. And then here we are later, and my watch is telling me that I'm mouth breathing more than, and my pulse oximetry will go down, which I didn't think I was doing. And even just breathing through an open mouth is a degree of pathology. It impacts your sleep. And then snoring is another level. So for people to remember, we've said this before, snoring is a disease. It is pathology. It's not normal. It's never normal. It's always impacting your sleep and decreasing the amount of recovery that you can do. And then over time, and then if you get to sleep apnea, where there's a diagnosable amount of snoring or lack of oxygen for lengths of periods of time, and just so that people are aware, it's called an apnea-hypopnea index. So the machines will measure how many times per night you have apnea, which is no breathing for a set number of seconds, versus hypo breathing or hypopnea for a set number, like you don't breathe enough times over a set number of minutes or seconds. And then it measures that. And so normal is less than 5, meaning per hour, 5 times per hour. So normal, from 0 to 5 times per hour, your breathing is disrupted in some way, whether you had to, take a deep breath or something. And we would call that normal physiology. So if you're 6 or 10 or 16 or 20 or whatever, and when it gets to severe, up where some people are at 50, 60, 70 times per hour, which means once per minute, they stop breathing and the brain has to wake up a little bit to reset the breathing mechanism. Yeah. And they don't wake up, but it messes up the sleep cycles. Yeah. And now, gosh, 10 to 20% of people with sleep apnea that's definable out there. And this doesn't mean that people are overweight. You're not overweight, but you probably would score on that AHI index if you did the test in a small degree, I would imagine, if you didn't have your mouthpiece in. So that's, like we say the words pre-diabetes or pre-hypertension, is that pre-sleep apnea? And yes, it is. And it's a tremendous burden over time. So one night doesn't make a difference, but it's a great example of night after night after night after night. It weighs in on the system. So it's another layer of paint on your weight every day, that when you're 40, 50, 60, 70 at some point. So it's clearly related to cardiovascular risk, to dementia risk, to energy risk and vitality and all of those things. So for people, if they notice that this is an issue, I would just say, don't sweep it under the carpet and just keep coping. This is one of those things too. And heck, we kind of mentioned, my website and people joining up with me, but that's something we can order across state lines for people. It's about $150 to get a medical grade sleep quality test. And these days you can even buy those machines. I would never call them medical grade, but to get a pattern, this is not going to be on your watches or the Oura Ring, but to look at the oxygen. And so for $150 or so, you can buy those kind of machines that record it overnight. Not the $20 pulse oximeter on your finger. It has to record it all night long so that you can be asleep. And if you're under 90%, that's a red flag. Now we're at high altitude, so it's a little bit harder to interpret that. But that's where I've been averaging, is right at 90%. So I think I'm on the border there. And when Dr. Bredesen said that was a red flag to me, to think, what kind of weight is that on my brain over time to be averaging that? Does it mean I need to have a mouthpiece, or I need to put oxygen, or move to sea level?
What's the CPAP machine?
Right. So if somebody has obstructive sleep apnea, there's also central sleep apnea, where your brain forgets to breathe. But if it's obstructive, meaning your mouth, you have a soft palate that's fallen back, or you're overweight or something like that. And then to treat it, how do you do that? You can do surgery, you can do dental therapy, or you could do the CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure is what that means. And it scares a lot of people. And we could do a whole show on CPAP alone. And the way I teach them is like, it's a skill. Yeah. If you have to do it, just learn it. Like we every 5-year-old is terrified of learning how to ride a bike, and it's like, we're going to make you do it. And then once you get the skill, then you never forget how to do it. That's kind of, you get comfortable with the CPAP, and it is learnable. For some people it's not, and it's a problem.
For the people who it's worked for, it's their testimony is life-changing.
My father-in-law, he always says, "Oh, I love my CPAP." Yeah. And I've also got patients who say, "I'll never touch that thing again. I cannot do it. I'll take the consequences," and they can't do it. So both people are out there, but around here, we seriously look at people moving to Texas because they can't live at the altitude.
Well, one little soapbox I have on the whole snoring issue is co-sleeping. I mean, that is a cultural thing that we do. You get married, or you have a significant other, you sleep together. And for those, especially who have a partner who snores or whatever, I have seen people wreck their own sleep by trying to, stay together in holy matrimony in bed. And, Terry and I still struggle with that, because you got 25 years of sleeping together, and, she feels really separated if we don't sleep together. But we've gotten to where we have another bed available in another room next door of doing, if one of us is snoring, having a hard time sleeping, or she's got, night sweats or whatever, of doing that and protecting at least one of our sleep. And man, I'm burdened by people, especially women, who stick with their husband in bed, who's snoring like a freight train, killing their sleep. Talk about a primary sleep wrecker, is somebody in your room snoring.
No, and honestly, Kevin, I wouldn't even call it a soapbox. This is one of those things where we'd say, look, this is medical. The studies have been done. Co-sleeping is more often detrimental to sleep than helping sleep. There you have it. and for many, many reasons.
Yeah.
Right now, many times on both sides, I've had women who say, "Oh, I would just not do that," or men on the other side saying, "I just," and then I would say, "Well, then lose the weight." And I would, in this particular case, I would say to the woman, 90 days, let that be a motivation for him to lose 10 pounds, that if it doesn't happen, we're going to stay
Or get the CPAP
separated.
machine or do whatever.
Well, and even CPAP is noise.
Oh, you're right.
And here we are. This is a great way to kind of end. It's complex. It's multifactorial. And if we could all go back 50 years and begin this in our infancy and become good sleepers over time and protect sleep, recognize the value of it. But if you're already over here where sleep is broken and you have sleep apnea or those kind of things, you're going to hurt yourself. And to those couples where the partner there is usually snoring, and there's so much snoring that it's sleep disruptive, I would say, if you can set up a 90-day period of time and don't do that. Sleep separate. Yeah. And just take a look at test it. Yes. Have very open and communication ahead of time about, our commitment to one another and all those kind of things. And of course, love making and that kind of thing. But even then, it's the actual studies say that the romance goes up. Because
I was going to say,
purposeful.
I'll be a better husband if I go over here and not disrupt your sleep so you wake up grouchy, or not have my sleep disrupted. And I literally, Terry and I, we quipped about it because something happened last weekend, and we said, we're great in bed together, except for sleep. Yeah.
But if you sleep better, does that help libido?
Absolutely.
Well, yes, it does.
Absolutely. Again, a cultural thing.
That's right.
That I get. Yeah. Well, so, on this, obviously there are things that you can do to measure your sleep. You can get an Oura ring. You can get a wearable device like we're wearing on our wrist that can help you get an idea of whether you're getting good sleep or not. But going back to the beginning, if you sleep through the night and wake up unrested, if you go to sleep at night, can't go to sleep, if you go to sleep at night, can't stay asleep, you don't need any measurement to tell you that you're having sleep problems. If you're feeling tired, And so here are some areas you can start addressing.